Right now, in 2026, gun laws are changing faster than they have in decades. And if you're not paying attention, you could wake up one day and find out your gun rights just disappeared overnight. Or worse, you could become a criminal without even knowing it. Before we dive in, do me one favor. Hit that subscribe button right now. Why? Because 90% of gun owners miss critical legal updates like this, and I don't want you to be one of them. The information I'm about to share could literally be the difference between staying legal and facing federal charges. So click subscribe and let's get into this. Here's what's happening. We're in the middle of the biggest shift in gun law since the Supreme Court decided that Bruen case back in 2022. And I am not exaggerating. Between Supreme Court cases, new federal legislation, and state laws popping up left and right, 2026 is turning into the year that defines gun rights for the next generation. Some of these changes are good, some are terrible, and some are just flat out confusing. Let me start with the good news. On January 1st, 2026, something happened that gun owners have been waiting for since 1934. The $200 NFA tax stamp on suppressors and short barrel rifles was eliminated. Gone. You heard that right. If you want to buy a suppressor now, you don't have to pay that extra $200 anymore. This came from a piece of legislation called the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that President Trump signed into law back in July 2025. Now, before you get too excited, let me be clear. Suppressors are still regulated. You still have to fill out the paperwork. You still have to go through the ATF approval process. But that tax? It's now $0. And let me tell you, the gun industry has gone absolutely crazy. Applications for suppressors shot up by 5,900% on January 1st. That's not a typo. 5,900%. People have been waiting years for this. And now that the financial barrier's gone, everyone's jumping in. But here's the thing nobody's talking about. Just because the tax is gone doesn't mean the wait time is gone. The ATF is getting flooded with applications. So if you're thinking about getting a suppressor, don't expect it to happen overnight. You might be waiting months, just like before. The difference is you get to keep that $200 in your pocket. Now, let's talk about something way more serious. Right now, the Supreme Court is hearing a case called Wolford versus Lopez. And this case could change everything about where you can carry your gun. Here's the deal. Hawaii passed a law that says you can't carry a gun on private property that's open to the public unless the owner gives you permission. That means stores, restaurants, shopping malls, basically anywhere that people can walk in. The default rule is no guns allowed unless the owner says otherwise. Gun owners challenged this law. They said it violates the Second Amendment. And in January 2026, the Supreme Court heard arguments. From what we know, the justices seemed pretty skeptical of Hawaii's law. But we won't know the final decision until later this year. Here's why this matters to you. If the Supreme Court rules against Hawaii, it could strike down similar laws in other states. And there are a lot of states with laws like this. On the other hand, if the court sides with Hawaii, you could see this default ban spread to more states. Imagine walking into a grocery store and not knowing if you're allowed to carry. Imagine having to ask permission at every single business. That's what's at stake here. And the decision could come down any day now. Quick question before we continue. Are you subscribed yet? No? Then you're missing out on updates that could keep you out of legal trouble. Hit that button now. Because what I'm about to reveal next is something that most gun owners don't even know is happening. And it could land you in serious trouble if you're not careful. All right, let's talk about state laws. Because while the federal government and the Supreme Court are doing their thing, states are going absolutely wild with new gun laws. And 2026 is shaping up to be one of the most aggressive years for state-level gun control in history. Let me give you some examples. In Virginia, the House of Delegates just passed a massive package of gun control bills in early February 2026. We're talking about an assault weapons ban, a ban on large capacity magazines, new requirements for gun storage, expanded liability for gun manufacturers, and more. These bills passed the House, and they're now headed to the Senate. Virginia has a Democratic governor, and Democrats control both chambers. So these bills have a real shot at becoming law. Here's what the assault weapons ban would do. It would make it illegal to import, sell, manufacture, or transfer what Virginia calls assault firearms. That includes semi-automatic rifles like the AR-15. If you violate this law, it's a Class 1 misdemeanor. And if you're convicted, you can't buy, possess, or transport firearms for 3 years. Now, the law does have some exceptions. Antique firearms are exempt. Guns that are permanently inoperable are exempt. And manually operated firearms like bolt-action rifles are exempt. But here's the kicker. If you already own one of these guns before July 1st, 2026, you can keep it. But you can't sell it to just anyone. You can only transfer it to a licensed dealer, pass it down to immediate family, or get it repaired. That's it. Republicans in Virginia are furious. They say this law blatantly violates the Supreme Court's Bruen decision. They say AR-15s are the most popular rifle in America, which means they're in common use, which means they're protected by the Second Amendment. And they're probably right about that. This law is going to get challenged in court, and it could end up back at the Supreme Court. But in the meantime, if you live in Virginia, you need to pay attention. Because if this law passes, your rights are going to change dramatically. And it's not just Virginia. New Mexico is considering sweeping gun control legislation. Florida is pushing pro-gun bills that would strengthen firearms preemption. California continues to have the strictest gun laws in the nation, according to rankings that just came out in January 2026. Every state is doing something different. And that's the problem. If you travel across state lines with your gun, you need to know the laws in every state you're driving through. Because what's legal in one state could get you arrested in another. That brings me to another federal bill that's moving through Congress right now. It's called the Constitutional Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act. This bill would allow people with valid concealed carry permits to carry their guns in any state, just like a driver's license. If you have a permit in your home state, you could carry in all 50 states. Sounds great, right? Well, it depends on who you ask. Gun rights groups love it. They say it finally treats the Second Amendment like a real constitutional right, but gun control groups hate it. They say it would override state laws and force states with strict carry requirements to accept permits from states with basically no requirements. This bill has been introduced before, but it's never passed. The question is whether it will pass this time. Republicans are pushing it hard. Democrats are fighting it, and we won't know the outcome for months. But if it passes, it would be one of the biggest changes to concealed carry law in American history. Now, quick legal note, this is educational information, not legal advice. Always consult an attorney for your specific situation. I'm here to give you the facts, but if you're facing a legal issue, you need to talk to a lawyer who knows the laws in your state. If you're finding this helpful, imagine what you'll learn in my next video about the exact words to say when police ask if you're carrying. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Because knowing what to say and what not to say during a traffic stop can be the difference between walking away free and spending the night in jail. All right, let's talk about something that's causing a lot of confusion. The ATF. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives has launched what they're calling a new era of reform. And this is important because the ATF is the agency that enforces federal gun laws. So when they change their policies, it affects every gun owner and every gun dealer in the country. Here's what they've done. First, they ended something called the Enhanced Regulatory Enforcement Policy. That was a policy that targeted gun dealers for minor paperwork errors. A lot of dealers lost their licenses over things like missing signatures or typos. The new ATF leadership said that was wrong, so they reversed it. They published a new policy that focuses on actual public safety issues, not paperwork mistakes. Second, they're encouraging dealers whose licenses were revoked under the old policy to reapply. And those applications will be judged under the new, more lenient standards. Third, they removed revoked dealer inspection reports from their public website. That's a big deal because those reports were being used to shame dealers even after they'd been punished. Fourth, the ATF set up a senior industry partnership advisor within the director's office. This person's job is to listen to concerns from the gun industry and try to fix problems before they become lawsuits. And fifth, the ATF established a classifications board. Now, anytime the ATF wants to classify a new type of firearm, that classification has to be reviewed and approved by the director's office before it's published. This is supposed to prevent situations where the ATF makes a rule that's inconsistent or unclear. There's more. The ATF is working on simplifying the Form 4473, which is the form you fill out when you buy a gun from a dealer. They're also updating the Form 20, which is what you use to transport NFA firearms across state lines. And they're reviewing all their current regulations to find rules that are outdated or unnecessary and get rid of them. So the ATF is trying to rebuild trust with gun owners. That's the message. But here's the question. Is it real? Or is it just public relations? Time will tell. But for now, it seems like the ATF is at least trying to be more reasonable than they were a few years ago. Now, let's talk about pistol braces. Remember the pistol brace rule? Back in 2023, the ATF published a rule that said certain pistol braces turn a pistol into a short barrel rifle. And if your pistol became an SBR under that rule, you had to register it, pay the tax, or get rid of it. Gun owners went nuts. Lawsuits were filed all over the country. And guess what? The gun owners won. Multiple federal courts struck down the pistol brace rule. They said the ATF overstepped its authority. So as of 2026, pistol braces are legal again at the federal level. You don't have to register your pistol as an SBR. You don't have to pay the tax. You can just use your brace like you always did. But here's the catch. Some states have their own laws about pistol braces. So even though the federal rule is gone, you still need to check your state law. And if you live in a state with strict gun laws, there's a chance that pistol braces could be banned or restricted under state law. So don't assume you're in the clear just because the federal rule got struck down. Do your homework. Hey, 73% of people watching right now aren't subscribed. Don't be part of that group. Join the 50,000 gun owners who get these updates first. Click subscribe, because the laws are changing so fast that if you're not paying attention, you're going to get left behind. And I don't want that to happen to you. All right, here's something else that's flying under the radar. The Supreme Court is sitting on a bunch of gun cases right now, and they're probably going to take up at least one or two of them in the next few months. Let me give you a quick rundown. There are cases about semi-automatic rifles and whether AR-15s can be banned. There are cases about large capacity magazines and whether states can ban magazines that hold more than 10 rounds. There are cases about felons in possession laws and whether people with nonviolent felonies can be permanently banned from owning guns. There are cases about age restrictions and whether it's constitutional to prohibit 18 to 20-year-olds from buying guns. And there are cases about sensitive places and where states can ban guns from being carried. Any one of these cases could end up at the Supreme Court, and any one of them could result in a decision that changes gun laws nationwide. The court has already said it is going to decide the Hawaii case and a case about drug users and gun possession. But there are more cases in the pipeline, and the court could take them up at any time. So if you want to know where gun rights are headed, you need to watch the Supreme Court, because that's where the big decisions are being made. Let me give you a hypothetical example to explain why this matters. Let's say you live in a state that bans AR-15s. You can't buy one, you can't own one, you can't even have one in your house. But then the Supreme Court takes up a case and rules that AR-15s are protected by the Second Amendment because they are in common use. Suddenly, that state ban is unconstitutional. It gets struck down. And now you can buy an AR-15 legally. That's the kind of power the Supreme Court has. One decision can wipe out laws in dozens of states. That's why these cases are so important. Here's the part that shocked me. Most gun owners have no idea this is happening. They don't know about the suppressor tax change. They don't know about the Hawaii case. They don't know about the state laws being passed right now. They're just living their lives, assuming everything is fine. And then one day, they find out they're breaking a law they didn't even know existed. Don't let that be you. Stay informed. Pay attention. Know your rights. And know the laws in your state. This information could literally expire after these cases are decided. Subscribe now, because the next video explains exactly what you need to do before these deadlines hit. You don't want to miss it. All right, let's wrap this up. Here's the bottom line. Gun laws in 2026 are changing faster than ever. The NFA tax on suppressors is gone. The Supreme Court is hearing major Second Amendment cases. States are passing new laws left and right. The ATF is trying to reform itself. And more changes are coming. If you own a gun, if you carry a gun, if you care about your Second Amendment rights, you need to stay on top of this, because the legal landscape is shifting under your feet. What was legal last year might not be legal this year. What's legal in your state might not be legal in the next state over. And what the law says today might not be what it says tomorrow. So here's what you need to do. First, subscribe to this channel so you get updates as soon as they happen. Second, check the laws in your state. Don't assume you know them. Look them up and read them. And if you're not sure, talk to a lawyer. Okay? Third, if you travel with your gun, research the laws in every state you're going to. Don't risk it. And fourth, stay engaged. Pay attention to what's happening at the Supreme Court, in Congress, and in your state legislature, because these decisions affect you directly. Look, I spent hours researching this stuff so you don't have to. The least you can do is hit subscribe to support the channel. Deal? Because the next video is going to cover something even more important. How to protect yourself legally if you ever have to use your gun in self-defense. You don't want to miss that. Hit subscribe now. One more thing. This is educational content. This is not legal advice. Laws vary by state. They change constantly. And your specific situation might be different from what I've described here. So if you have a legal question or you're facing a legal problem, don't rely on a YouTube video. Talk to a qualified attorney in your state. They can give you advice based on your specific circumstances. Gun rights are under attack in some states and expanding in others. It's a wild time to be a gun owner, but knowledge is power, and now you know what's happening. Don't let these changes catch you off guard. Stay informed, stay legal, and stay safe. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video.